Reese y McDonald's tienen la clave para un post-game meal de campeones. Una QPC con salsa barbecue y tocino, papitas y un refresco. Los pros le llaman el Angel Reese Special. Llévate el Angel Reese Special solo en McDonald's. En McDonald's, participantes por tiempo limitado.
I'm looking for all the baddies all over the world. Ladies, where my baddies at? I'm bad, you bad. Way bad. Where my baddies at? I'm bad, you bad.
Thanks for joining me in the Everything and Anything in a Bit Gay podcast. Today, I have somebody that I just really love so much because she gave me a reading 2 years ago, and it was so authentic and real. And we're going to talk about that. But I want to welcome Tracy to my podcast.
Hey.
Hi, Tracy. I'll let Tracy explain how she does this because I want to understand like when this started for her and get her whole history. So tell me what you did for me that day where you're writing and you spoke to my dad, and I have examples of what I know it was him. Because there's stuff that you said that no one would know.
I can't really explain it still. So I don't claim to be gifted or touched by God or, I really don't. I think this is something I just taught myself how to do. So the story is like, so what I do, if the question is my process. So what I offer in a session is a conversation with one person of your choice. Now, that doesn't mean that other people may not show up, but the ideal goal is one person. So people like that because they're used to going to mediums who they basically are told that they can't control who comes through, and that the person with the most important message, basically, none of that is true. You just have to ask and they show up. So, so we basically focus on a person, and then that's it. Then they are called. They do the writing. It's pages and pages. It just looks like scribbles afterwards, but when it's happening, it feels like words to me. So it's hard to explain. But I've been doing it for 30 years, so it's just like breathing to me. So.
And when did you first realize, or how did you teach yourself how to do this? Like, what age were you? So 30 years ago, so you were 2, and
I'm actually 55. I love you though. So I've been like, when I was a teenager, the internet didn't exist and the libraries did. And I was a bookworm. Okay. So I was in all enriched classes in school. They tried to skip me multiple grades. I was just like insatiable appetite. I've since been diagnosed with ADHD, but at the time I was just scattered and all over the place and whatever. So I had this interest in the occult section of the library. So that's what they called it. And in there was, palmistry, numerology, astrology, spells, like reading tea leaves, palmistry, like all this stuff. So I dove into all of it. And it was just like party favors. I would be like the person at the party when I was a teenager to be like, let me see your palm, like all like whatever. And then my sister and I were at a cottage and there was a Ouija board there. And this sort of fell into that world for me of like spooky things.
Yeah.
And, but it worked. So it worked. And then I was like, what is going on? How does this work? What is this? So I became obsessed with it and I created my own word, tools to try to figure out who's talking to me, what is this, and just became obsessed. But I felt like I could only do it with my sister, and I didn't even think it was something you could do by yourself. And one day she came home and she said, "Have you ever heard about automatic writing?" And then as we both used our hands on any of the word games that we played with whatever energies we were speaking to, we did the same thing with a pen. So we just both held the pen and whatever. But then one day, somebody came through and basically told us that, gave us their name, gave us a whole bunch of details, things like that. And it was just sort of a game for us. It was a ghost story for our kids at sleepovers. It wasn't anything serious. And then it came back that person, I got mail for the previous owner. He said he lived in our house and it was in his name, and everything that I found his obit, all the names of his family were accurate.
Wow.
Like everything was accurate. So I reached out to her and said, this isn't a joke. This isn't a game. This is real. You need to come back. And she was between Nashville and here at the time, because her kids were on a TV show called Nashville. So and then, so I just basically dove into doing it myself. And that's kind of how I taught myself how to do it. It was just thousands of hours of staring at a pen, watching it move a little bit at a time. And then more, and then pages. So,
and is she able to do it by herself as well now, or no?
I think she could, but because I got so good at it, everyone just sort of relies on me to do it.
Okay.
But I personally think, maybe not writing, but I think everyone can do this. And that's what I try to tell people. That is my big message to everybody, is I don't think that if there's there is a higher power, but I don't think that this higher power was like, who would be good? This disaster of a human being right here. I'm going to choose her. And so I just feel like no one would ever choose me. I know that sounds, like, I'm putting myself down, but I'm just a mess. Okay. So I feel like I cultivated it. I feel like I grew it. I feel like I taught myself. And I think that this is something that other people can do as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll tell you that I took a mediumship class. I did it for, I guess, 3 or 4 months with this guy. His name is Michael Mayo, and he's amazing. And I agree with you. I think anybody can kind of connect, and you gotta believe in it and stuff.
You do. Trust is the main thing. Yeah. So, it's the main thing. I say it's the gasoline, so it's about being open and setting intentions. Of course, that's really important, but then trust, that is what fuels it. Absolutely. And that's unfortunately where everybody sort of falls short. Yeah.
So let me ask you about some of the readings that you've done in the past with people. So what's the most unique reading that you've done? So somebody or the reading that
so
maybe
many.
Not unique, maybe it's where somebody, you made them the most happy. Maybe they connected with somebody that they never thought they'd connect with again, and you told them a secret that they needed to know.
Well, I mean, I can't. I get messages every single day from people who say, I'm finally able to sleep, or I finally have peace, or I finally have closure, or thank you so much. My life is fair. Like literally every day. So it's like they're all kind of stand out. But the one I just did, because it's fresh in my mind, because the reality is I forget them. Okay. So I don't know if this is some kind of, I feel like it's like an ADHD thing where you're just not connected to the now. And I think that in this space, that's like sort of a bit of a disconnect, is where I reach this place. I don't know. It's just a theory. Okay. But it's like, because I have ADHD, when I lose my bank card, people be like, retrace your steps. And I'm like, there are no steps. Okay. So I have no steps. This is what this is like. It's, I describe it to people like writing on a chalkboard and someone's erasing it as I'm writing it. I don't remember them. So I can only tell you about the most recent one. And that's only because I've been working on a video. It's probably the next one I'm going to post. But she is approaching a year. And it's actually a beautiful story. She's approaching a year. It's a sad story. They are the most angelic, most beautiful couple I've ever seen. They were engaged to be married. And it was right before Christmas last year that he was just plucked off the planet by a drunk driver on the highway. And the session started with, immediately I put the pen down, and the first word that came out was celebrate. And celebrate means it's someone's birthday. So I said, first word out of the gate is celebrate. I said, somebody's birthday. And she said, it's my birthday tomorrow. I said, okay. Well, he's basically saying happy birthday. And then she just held up she goes, smiles and says, the only thing I wrote down was say happy birthday to me. And she held up her page and it just said, say happy birthday. And that was right out of the gate. And then I'm like, he's showing me a Christmas tree, and it's not just any Christmas tree. There's something really spectacular about this, or something very important about it. So she tells me this story about how their entire many, many years together, they would buy ornaments every year to basically represent the year that they just spent together. And she had this Christmas tree up, and they had already bought their ornaments last year when he was abruptly stolen from her. And she says, I never took it down. It stays as it is. And I just went out yesterday and bought our ornaments for this year. She said, if I move, I will pick the tree up as it is, move it with me. It stays up all year round. And there was a discussion about his being remembered that way, him being honored that way, and how sweet it was. But this just happened. Like they all, I never know what's going to happen when I put the pen down. And I'm just as surprised as everybody else when these things come out legitimately. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've watched so many of your videos, and there's times you're just like I could tell you're so surprised. You're just like, oh, yeah. Wow. I mean, obviously you're getting a message from somebody that you don't know. And I think it's just so amazing that you do this. Do you ever like kind of look back at this whenever you hang up and you just like, I'm so happy that I have this talent so I can connect people?
Yeah. I mean, the actual story of how I started doing it is kind of tragic, but because I was doing this, as I told you, as just sort of a thing that I did. So after I discovered that the person I was talking to was somebody who actually existed and did actually own the house prior to me living there, I would just be in the garage by myself smoking, and he would keep me company, and I would just talk to him the entire time. But it was just something I did on my own. I didn't tell anybody. I grew up in extreme adversity, and I wanted my children to have some normalcy. And I'm already a professional musician, and everybody around me is very colorful. And so I thought, if I talk to the dead as well, then they're doomed. So I just kept it a secret. Yeah. But my family knew. So when my brother committed suicide just before the pandemic, we were in his room, and he had a journal on his bed. And so we were looking through it, and one of the pages I saw my name in big letters, and I said, does that say Tracy? And when I looked, the page said, you talk to the dead, talk to me, please. And he had just hung himself in the room 24 hours before that. So I was pissed at him but it was the only way I could talk to him was doing this. So I did. And in the meantime, I'm in all these suicide support groups, and I'm quiet. I'm in the shadows, and they're all talking amongst themselves. I just wanted to be around sort of a group of people who understood the complexity of my grief. But one day somebody said, do you think they miss us? And all these answers came out like, oh, no, they don't miss us because that's painful. And where they are, they don't feel any pain. And then other people are like, my priest says they're in purgatory. Other people like, my minister says they're burning in hell. And then somebody else like, my Reiki instructor says that they were a flash of light and they were only supposed to be here a short time. And I'm reading it all like, no, you know? So I crept out of the shadows and I said, I don't care if you believe me or not, but I can talk to my brother, and no, they're not in purgatory, and no, they're not in hell, but no, they weren't a flash of light. They were only supposed to be here a short time. And yes, they do miss us. Actually, they miss us. And I said, but they're all protected. They're all loved. They're all healing. They're all fine. They're all good. So don't stop thinking of that they're being punished. Stop thinking these things. Your loved ones are fine. You know, then my inbox exploded with people like, my husband shot himself in front of me last week. Please help me. My 12-year-old son hung himself. Please help me. I was like, no. Absolutely no. I don't do this with other people. I only do this by myself in my garage, smoking and drinking coffee. Yeah. And they begged and said, can you please try? Can you please try? And I did, and it worked. Then I did, and it worked, and so on. So for about 7 months straight, 24 hours a day, all over the world, all I did was suicides. That's it. Just straight, that's it. And it was a distraction to my own pain. And it also helped me to help other people. And then it started branching out. You sat with my friend whose son took his life, and I miss my mom. And so next thing you know, it's branching out. And then eventually my family were like, yeah, you need a calendar. You need some boundaries. You need, whatever. Yeah. So 4 years ago, pretty much to the day, I started UpTalk with a $50 price tag. And next thing you know, I was 6 months booked in advance and 45,000 TikTok followers. And it just sort of happened to me. Yeah.
And did you get answers from your brother? Or did you feel like a sense of relief whenever you did connect with him?
Yeah, I did. I mean,
were you less mad at him?
That's a tough one. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am. He struggled with mental illness, and he was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenia or schizophrenic when he was in his 20s, and he tried to quiet those voices with opiates, with
Hmm.
alcohol, with whatever, and I think he just was tired. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not mad. I forgive him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So has this whole thing made you think differently about dying, about death? Like,
Yeah.
and tell me, like, how do you feel? Like, I'm assuming you're probably not even scared to die.
No,
Because,
I'm not. I'm scared of the pain that gets left with the people behind because
hmm.
I've had so much loss and I am absolutely destroyed. So I lost my mom just over a year ago and I haven't
Oh.
recovered. And so that part, yeah, like I know my kids are going to feel what I feel with my
Hmm.
mom, and that kind of hurts me. But the idea of it's kind of exciting because then I'll like get to understand what all this stuff means. I mean, 90% of the stuff that gets told to me goes over my head. Like I'm just a dumb, fleshy human. I don't understand this stuff.
Hmm.
So I write it down and I'm like, wow, that's cool. Especially when people ask questions like, what's it like there? Things like that. Or when there's questions about purpose or path or you know multiple realities or
Yeah.
multiple lives, like all these complex sort of ideas about this energetic sort of life. That's where I'm just like fascinated, but I don't understand. Of course I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't claim to. Yeah.
What do you think it is, though? Do you think it's just we're all just a bunch of energy and we're all going to be back together one day?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, this is the thing. I have a goal here. Okay. So now that I've started this and now that the ball's rolling and now that everything's happening, I have a goal. And my goal is to demystify this whole thing. Okay. This whole woo woo aspect of like,
Hmm.
saging and mantras and crystals and like energies are stuck here and hauntings and friggin' all this shit. It's like, demystify it. It's simple. It's just not that complicated. Energy doesn't die. Our physical body dies, the energy continues. Now, the part that's hard for us to sort of wrap our brain around is that energy, firstly, contains the memory and the experience of its life in this body. But
Hmm.
secondly, and more importantly, it continues to learn. Okay. So it continues to learn. That's the part where people get a bit like, but it's really just not that complicated.
Yeah.
So it gets complicated. I'm going to be honest with you. When they start talking about multiple realities and things, it gets
Yeah.
complicated. But the general idea, I feel like people sense energies in the home. They sense things like this. Next thing you know, they're calling in people to like exercise, whatever, and they're thinking, and 99% of the time, it's somebody who loves you. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's just like you're exercising your grandma who's coming to, and it just like stop being spooked by it, stop being scared by it. It's not that mystical. It's not scary. That's my goal.
Yeah.
I want this so badly, but I've got the whole centuries of stories and lore are against me. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you have the whole religion thing that's against you
Oh,
too, where people just
100%.
like would never ever, but even fathom this being true at all.
Oh,
So
absolutely. On top of that, they believe I'm talking to demons.
yeah,
So there's
of
also
course.
that,
Yeah.
which I claim I don't know that I'm not. Okay. And the reason, but I say to everybody who says that, because I don't know anything, I'm not one of those, again, mediums who claims anything is fact, because
Yeah.
I'm interpreting. Okay. I don't know anything, but, I just am like, what's their end game then? Because I get messages every day about how I've helped people and how I brought light and how I've brought them peace and whatever. So if this is a demon, I'm confused
Yeah.
as to why they're spreading love and light. I don't understand. But I'm not going to claim that I know anything. So
Well, the guy that I did the 3 or 4 month class with, he said that there is really no demons.
I don't believe there is either. But again, I don't know. These are all my own theories based on thousands of readings. So
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. And he says, you're not going to run into anybody bad. It's not like you're going
That's
to,
me. That's what I
yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you should look him up.
We're aligned there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's a really good, authentic
What's
guy.
his name?
His name is Michael Mayo.
Okay, I will look him up.
Yeah, he's just an amazing person. So
Okay.
I did want to just kind of tell you, I wanted to tell the audience more about my story, and I'm sure you probably don't remember it because there were so
I'd
many.
love to hear it.
So basically, what happened is that me and my aunt, who was my father's sister, ended up doing. This was like right before COVID or right during COVID. We decided to do the 23andMe and Ancestry.com test to see our DNA because we were told all of our lives, oh, you're part American Indian. I'm like, I am not. There's no way I'm American Indian. Like, I look nothing like or Native American, I should say, is the proper way to say a Native American. And she doesn't either. My aunt doesn't either. And so we sent away our 23andMe and we got it. We got the results back. 0 Native American, nothing. Yeah. I was told I was German, Irish. I am Irish and British and no German at all, really. And so she got her test back and she's like, oh, like nothing from me either. Our DNA was a little different, and like, that made sense. But then we started looking like, I'm like, oh, my last name is Randalls and I have no Randalls connected with me. And she's like, neither do I. I'm like, okay, well, maybe they're just, it's not that of an uncommon name, but it's not so common either. And then we said, well, let's do Ancestry and see what comes back. And so we ended up doing Ancestry and it came back and she didn't come back as my aunt in either one. And we really we just thought, okay, just like messed up. She came back as like my cousin or something like that. It was something really bizarre. Mm-hmm. And then we started looking at it and we're like, well, why don't we have the same? Like I thought, okay, well, maybe my mom has different relatives and that's why. But I'm like, who are all these people on your side? Like, we don't know who any of these people are. And we had one of her cousins who is a Randalls, who was my father's. My father passed away, and who was a cousin on her side. And she did the test, and I was connected to her, and she wasn't. So we found out after some investigation that her father that raised her was not her biological father. That somewhere along the way, her mother ended up, who knows what it was. I guess this was the 50s, had a one night stand or some affair or something. And there is some things in her past and or the people that are in her DNA testing that she could reach out to and find out who her father was, but she's come to terms with it now. Mm-hmm. She's like, the guy that raised me is my father, even though by blood he isn't. But how you come into this story is that we were hoping. So my father and my uncle, her brother, ended up doing a lot of like family tree stuff, and we wanted to know if there was. My aunt remembers that there was a letter written at one point that my grandmother hid from her. And when my grandmother died, we really wanted to find out like what happened. And to this letter. So this is the part that's strange that you never would have known anything about. 2 things. One, you said there's something about brass. You kept saying brass. I'm like, a brass bed? You're like, I don't know, but brass keeps coming up. And when I hung up with you, I called my aunt to tell her, she said, we've talked about these brass knuckles that my uncle had and that she wants that. And she says, we talk about these every other day. She goes, that's exactly what she was talking about. I'm like, oh my God, that's so crazy. You're right. Why didn't it just didn't come to me. And the other thing that you never would have been able to know is that when my grandmother died, there was a box that she had in her nightstand that had a letter, we think, from the guy that is probably her real father. Mm-hmm. And you said, there's a box, and a woman went over after your grandmother died to this man. She gave the box. He gave her the box and the letter, and basically they destroyed it. You said it you knew exactly what the box looked like.
Oh my God!
You
love
knew it
this
all.
Story. I love this story.
And there's no way you would have known. And you said there's a letter in there you didn't say what the letter said, but basically you said it's the letter that meant something. It's destroyed now, and it was in this box, and they basically destroyed the evidence.
Oh my God.
And there's just no way. Only her and I knew this. Not even like, my father is dead. So and that's who you spoke to. You spoke to my father. And I said, that's who I want to talk to is my father. And that's,
Mhm.
and there were some other things that you said that I don't remember what it was. I have the Zoom recording still, but there were things that you would have never, ever been able to even remotely guess that you spoke to him.
It's shocking. Firstly, I love that story. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, you would be probably not surprised actually, because you lived it. How many sessions I do involving 23andMe and DNA stories. So there was this one that I did not that long ago where the woman came to me because she got this test done or something like that. And then her dad thought it was so interesting that he wanted one, and they did it, and basically found out that the father that she was literally born, raised with was not her father. So surprise to him, surprise to her. And they went to mom, who couldn't recall. She just couldn't recall. She had no memory. Okay. So in this DNA test, came back two brothers. Now this session began. Now you'd think because she found out her actual biological father was dead. Now when we get into things like the person has never met the person they're calling, it's sometimes difficult to validate, because I could say he's saying the name whatever and they don't know either, who the family is or whatever. Now oftentimes they'll come back later and say, I did look that up and he does have a sister named Kathy or whatever, but for the most part, it's difficult to validate. But in this particular one, he came out of the gate with two names, and they were the names of the two brothers that she found on the DNA test. So immediately I knew that that's a good validation that we have the person that she's looking for. Now, she wanted to speak to this man to find out how she came to be. Okay. Yeah. Because her mother couldn't remember, right? And the guy told this story like, he said, I lived less than a block away from her. We worked at the same bar. I was a doorman. She was a bartender. And we developed this sort of flirty work relationship. I was not allowed to drink on the job, but she would put a beer on the bar and she'd watch it for me. And I'd come over and sneak sips, like all this sort of story about this playful sort of bar relationship. And then there was a lot to it, but that was basically the story. So she ends up reaching out to me like the next day or a couple days later and says, by the way, I want you to know that I told my mother what you said, and it jarred her memory. It jarred her memory, and it was exact. The guy lived less than a block away from her, worked together at the bar. They had a fling. Okay. And then she ended the fling when she became pregnant, said that it was her husband's baby. Baby was raised as her husband's. In fact, this friend of hers that was the actual biological father found out that she was having this baby and said, my sister's crib for my niece is in my garage, and it's just sitting there if you want it. So he actually was the person to set up his own biological daughter's crib in her room. Yeah. And, so this whole, like, it happens all the time where these things come out and then people are like, there's no way to find this out unless I talk to somebody who can talk to the dead, which is always interesting to me. Did
the guy know that was his daughter, or he didn't know until you told him?
No, he had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, that was the answer I got. Again, I'm interpreting, but he said he had no idea. None.
Wow. That is crazy.
Yeah. So, it was, and again, it's like, is he finding out now or does he know because he's on the other side? Did he know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, but the fact that I was able to reach him so easily with really clear validation says to me that they're most likely connected. Okay. So not most likely, they have to be. Yeah. So, she's supposed to be, and he was supposed to be her dad. Like, that's how it was supposed to be. But again, over my head, right? Yeah.
Do you get people that get addicted to this and they want to talk to you every day if they could?
I actually, in the beginning, when I was booking only weeks ahead, I would have people that would come sometimes every 2-3 weeks. Yeah. There was one person that came for like almost 2 years, year and a half straight, booked a year in advance of like every 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah.
And do you feel like you need to cut them off at some point just so they live a normal life, or do you go with the flow?
I mean, I feel like, I always feel like the person that's sitting in front of me at the time they're sitting in front of me is supposed to be there.
Okay.
And so I just sort of trust whatever's happening, but I can't lie. I mean, there's definitely a part of me that's like, what could they possibly say? That they haven't said already. I don't know. But yeah, that particular case was the one I'm talking about. I actually referenced in my last video because he said something very, very important. He said, I really appreciate what you've done for us, Tracy. He also committed suicide. It was back in the very beginning when I first started this. And he said, but I just want to talk to my wife, like without you. Okay. I don't want you in the room with us every time we have an intimate discussion.
Yeah.
And he said, you need to learn to do what she does. And she said, I can't do that. This is like, whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, Tracy's talent or her gift or her ability or whatever is to connect to those she's not connected to. You and I are connected. There's no reason we can't talk. And that stuck with me for years. Because I think that's an extremely important message, that there's no reason you can't talk to the people you're connected to.
Did she ever try?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
She's Mormon, and I don't know. I just think that people just are like, I can't, I can't do it. But yeah, he tried. Yeah.
That's so amazing. I mean, again, I think you just have to like be so thankful that you figured out you have this, because you've given so much probably joy and like answers to people over the several years that you've been doing this. I mean, and this is what you're doing full time now, right?
I am, and I'm actually more thankful about it falling into my lap. It was a tragic way, as I've already described, that it fell into my lap. Okay. But at that time, I had been doing tech startups for about 15 years, and they kept my ADHD brain very, electrified. Okay. And so you're working on Christmas Day, 2:00 in the morning. Every day you're wearing different hats. It's like, and so I was very stimulated by this environment, but I also was aging, and I was also female. And in tech, there's a lot of sexism and a lot of ageism. And, I was getting close to 50, and I knew that, and also startups are like, come up, go down, right? So I was just bouncing job to job, different platforms, like having the time of my life. But I knew my last job, I knew it was going to be my last job, because it took me months to get that one. And my resume was really impressive. So I was like, I know that it's because of my age. I know it is. And it's okay. It sucks because I know more than the newbies, but whatever. So I was like, this is my last job. And I thought, what am I going to do after this? And I was like, I'm not going to do this again, because I don't want to go through this rejection for months at a time. And each one of these jobs were months of like, step one, you made it through phase one, you made it through phase two. It was like a full-time job trying to get a job. So I was like, I guess I'll work at the bookstore or like, Starbucks or something.
Yeah.
And then this just happened. And I'm like, I could be 80 and still do this. In fact, it might even make me more, somebody that people trust, I don't know. I could do this forever, and it's remote. I can do it.
You can be anywhere you want in the world and do it.
Anywhere. Yeah.
Are you doing are you reading people all over the world too?
All over the world every day. Yeah. So it's literally like I work with the entire world, the time zone. So, Australia and UK and South Africa and India and like all over the world. I would say half are US.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I'm Canadian, but at least half are US. And then the rest of the other half is the rest of the world. But it's every day somebody new. And it's so fascinating to me, to the stories, some of them are,
You should write a book.
I actually am planning on it. But I don't want to write a book like chapter 1, what happens when you die, because there's too many of those out there, and who gives a shit what I have to say. So what I want to do is, there's some excerpts, like every time I do these readings, most times there's a couple lines in there that are like absolutely so beautiful, so profound, like formed in ways I would never, ever think to say them. Yeah. And I want to go through and farm just like, all of the thousands of hours of videos that I have, and just pull out these moments and just have this book that'll read almost like, like something that you could read in the bathroom. Again, I'm trying to demystify. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want it to appeal to those who aren't necessarily reading Dolores Cannon. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want it to appeal to those people who would buy Chicken Soup for the Soul or something like that. But hopefully make them think a little bit, or maybe open themselves up a little bit, things like that. So my audience, I'm trying to appeal to not the spiritual world necessarily.
Yeah.
This goal may be too lofty, who knows, but that's my dream. So
what do you think about Dolores Cannon and her and all the things that she discovered?
Well, I don't read a lot of other people's things or watch a lot of other people because I want to be influenced. Okay.
Yeah.
But I will say that when I first started talking to my brother, when people pass, especially tragically, in the first little bit, you're just really yourself without a body. So you don't really understand why, what happened, what your path is, like purpose. You don't really understand it yet. And so he said to me, and this was, again, I was very green. I had only talked to like a couple people, So he said to me, from what I understand, this was some sort of agreement or contract or something like that with mom. And I was like, what? Mom would never choose to make you mentally ill and tortured your whole life, because I didn't understand that. I also didn't understand that he also agreed to it. Okay. So I didn't get it at the time. And I was like, Mom would never. Okay. Then I talked to my dad, who was also on the other side before my brother. And I said, what is David talking about? This whole thing with a contract or an agreement or something that he's supposed to be sick and suicidal. And my dad said, that's my understanding. Yes, that was the agreement. I said, well, what does she get in return? Because I'm thinking like the devil went down to Georgia, like she's going to get superstardom for for selling her son's soul, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, it doesn't work that way. He said, souls make these agreements all the time, and it doesn't work that way. So I was so confused. I went to Google and I just put soul agreements, soul contracts, and all this stuff came up. And that's when Dolores Cannon came up. And I was like, oh my God, this exists. Like, this is a real thing. People are talking about this, but I had no idea before that. So that's why I believe that that's true.
Yeah.
Because it was told to me, then I read it. Not that I read it and then applied it to what
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, but I didn't understand, and my brother didn't understand that it's not Mom and it's not David. It's a collection of every single life and every single experience my mother's soul has had and my brother's soul has had, and they both agreed to that.
Yeah.
To experience,
and so they'll come back again. You'll probably be in another lifetime together again. Do you think that?
Oh yeah, my brother says things that like I don't. My brother said to me one time, in every life, every reality that I can remember, I abort the mission, which is basically I take myself out.
Okay.
Before I like early or whatever it is, whatever the word was. I abort the mission early. Okay. And he said, sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later, but it's like everyone I can remember, I basically check out. And I said, in these lives, are you David? And he said, yeah, and you're Tracy. Like, I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Does it mean that we, David and Tracy, are living multiple existences? The same kind of, I don't know what it, I have no idea. Okay.
And we probably won't know until we're gone ourselves, right?
Then this goes back to the question of like, how do you feel about dying? I'm like, I'm excited to find out what all this means,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Same. I think when I took that mediumship class, that's how I feel too. Like, I'm excited to know what's afterwards. And then, but I don't want to die now. Like, I'm good where I'm at.
No.
Well, like I said, I watch all of your videos. Ever since that you gave me that reading, I just have so much respect for you. And I think you're really, really amazing. And if anybody's not a believer, they should schedule a reading with you because they would be a believer afterwards. So Tracy is on TikTok. It's Up Talk with Tracy. I will put it in the description of this podcast so you can click on it and go check out her videos. Schedule some time with her. I'm sure you're pretty booked out though, aren't you?
I'm not. My life took a turn in April, and I don't want to trauma dump on you, but there was a lot went on. So I shut down my calendar for a long time. I kind of ghosted my social medias, and I am back up. And for the first time in 4 years, I'm only about a month or 6 weeks or something like that booked out. So
book Tracy. Get her in January or February because
that's right.
I'm telling you, you will come with the intention of who you want to speak to, because that's what I did, and Tracy got got my father right away, and we got answers I never thought we would get. So she's
You're
really amazing.
also absolutely allowed to ask questions. Okay. So if there's anything that you're allowed to ask questions. But I will say one thing, and that is that they don't know anything they didn't know before they left. So,
Yeah.
So I had one person ask me if about their mom. Mom said, they said, can my mom tell me where her wedding ring is? And mom said, the last thing I remember is we were moving and I took it off because I didn't want to get damaged. That's the last thing I remember. And the daughter says, well, that's what she said when she was alive. And I'm like, well, that's what she remembers.
Yeah.
That's all she knows. She lost it in the move, So, but you can come and ask questions. Absolutely. Just like you did,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is about me again is just that I didn't really have to ask it. You almost kind of like guided the whole thing because I knew in my head what I wanted, and I gave you no indication, and you just came back with exactly what.
It does happen where I'll just put down the pen and they write and write and write and write and write. Then I'll look up and say, was there anything you wanted to know? And they're like, they literally answered every question pretty much in a row that I wrote down. Like that happens too. Yeah, a lot.
The other thing that I remember you saying, and then we can end the conversation.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm loving talking to you.
No, I could talk to you for like days. The other thing is, I'll just say that you describe my father's personality because he was a bit of a smart ass when he was writing something to you, and you go, "Oh, he's a funny guy," or I don't remember exactly what you said, but you described him to the T. And just by that, I'm just like, I think that was the first thing you said. I'm like, wow, I think she really could be talking to my father. And then I didn't doubt you could do it. I just like, I wasn't sure if it was going to be my father or not, because I've always wanted him to come forward in other readings that I've done with people. And he only came forward with you. And then whenever I took this mediumship class, he came forward actually with them too. So, but you were just so spot on, and you answered so many questions in that hour that we spent together, and it's just amazing. So,
well, I always love to see men, but the thing is that I have zero issues with gay men. So they're open and beautiful.
Yeah.
Straight men show up because their wives bought them a gift or somebody thought it would be a good idea, and they're just arms crossed. But I've never lost one yet. Everybody leaves happy, even the people that come in extremely skeptical. But
do you change their mind most of the time? Do they realize at the end, like, oh shit, this is real?
I think my most viral video was the reason that it was is because it was this very straight dude. Okay, he's like a fireman or something like that, just buff and whatever. And his mother had a session, and he watched the video, and he said that he knew that it had to be a lie because there's no way that this is real. So he completely booked a session to just debunk it. I didn't know that. But by the end, he was like just completely blown away. And then he agreed to let me post the video. And that was the day I woke up with 35,000 more followers than I went to bed with, was that guy. And then he booked me again a couple times after that. So, it's scary for me because I know that I'm oftentimes I'm being tested, even if they're not saying I am. It's scary for me because I feel like if you come closed off and if you feel like you like if somebody says, I wrote a word down, like, what is it? It's like, you're ruining this for you. You're ruining this. Sometimes the word will come out organically. Sometimes they'll answer that. Sometimes it won't. But you basing everything on this test, you're ruining it for you. Like you should not. Yeah. So,
do you ever have people that say, oh, so me and my aunt, we said whenever we die, we have a code word. Yeah. And we're going to see if we can, one day, whenever one of us die, we're going to try to do a reading with someone and then see if we can get that.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
So,
but, I mean, it happens sometimes where it just happens. I think if it sneaks up on me, I'm more successful with those types of tests than if you tell me I'm being tested. Yeah. Like one time I was like, they just wrote the word llama. Like what? It's LLA. There's no other word. This is llama. Like, I don't understand. And the person just held up. They didn't say anything. They just held up their page and it was one word and it just said llama on the word.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my God. What is it with this?
I don't know. I've never seen that before.
Me neither. What the heck just happened?
You just got fireworks, though.
What? That is insane. Okay.
Okay. Somebody's
anyway,
listening to us now.
Absolutely. That was the weirdest thing. Oh my God.
Well,
anyway, but just, so if I feel like if people are going to test, then don't tell me.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, yeah. Because I get in my head, I'm like, oh my God, what is it? They're like, there's a song that we love. And my head just goes through everything. I'm just like, yeah. And so just don't tell me if there's a test. But I do think it's a great idea for people to have these conversations, just like you're talking about signs and words and things like that. Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, especially if somebody's terminal, right? Like, have these conversations for sure.
Cool. Well, please, everybody go to TikTok, look up Talk with Tracy, check out her videos, book a session with her. Again, she's only 4-6 weeks. You can still get in and do it today because she's amazing. So thank you so much, Tracy, for being on my show. I have, again, followed you ever since that you gave me the reading, and I love everything you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I've loved this so much. And thank you so much for asking me to talk. I sometimes feel like everyone around me is really bored of the things I have to say. And so I get very excited if somebody wants to actually talk to me.
Yeah, you're great. So be sure to follow my show. Be sure to follow Tracy again on TikTok, Talk with Tracy. Follow her and subscribe to my show wherever you are listening to it at. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And thanks for Tracy for being on.
Thank you.
All the baddies all over the world. Ladies, where my baddies at? I'm bad. You bad. Where my baddies at? I'm bad. You bad. Where my baddies at? I'm bad. You bad. Where my baddies at? Yeah. Real bad on the prowl. Heard you was next, but I'm up now. Yeah, I'm shining like bling blow. And I see a couple haters in the crowd. Yeah, drip, drop, I'm juicy. Don't really care what you say. And we all on Duce. It's your birthday, girl, go crazy. Now make it clap and get low. Yeah, now back it up a little more. Yeah, now bring it up slow. You need a stage the way you putting on the show. Now grab your bestie by the hand and let her know she bad. Say grab a baddie by the hand and let her know she bad.